Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Education Insights Focus on Behavior. I am your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I am here with my trusty co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hi, Daniel.
Hello.
And Dr. Daria Lorio Burston. Hi, Daria.
Hi, everybody.
And as always, we have our producer with us, Emily Muse. Hey, Emily.
Hello.
And I want to start our conversation today. It's been a couple months since the beginning of the year. So I guess my first question is, did you do a New Year's resolution this year?
I did.
What was it?
I did too.
Who?
Well, and they shifted. So one was to make sure that I was exercising, doing something to exercise every day, even if it was just kind of get up, walk around the block, whatever. The second one was to make time, quote unquote, for me. So doing something creative or something that was, something I wanted, like play guitar or like just setting 15 minutes aside to do that, build something, whatever. So those were my two. Do you want to know how they're going?
Sure. How's it going?
I've closed my move rings every day for, 48 days, which is more than is in the year, but I'm doing it. Even if it means getting on the dumb treadmill at like 9:30 and just walking for 10 minutes, like I've got whatever it is about this stupid watch is making me motivated
That's
to do the
awesome.
thing. So that one's going well. The other one has morphed into maybe the thing I'm doing for me is walking on the dumb treadmill at 9:30 at night and not necessarily what I get better at. So that one's not going as well. And there's a number of reasons, but
Okay.
one's going
Daria,
well,
how about
one is
you?
less
Did you set a New Year's resolution this
Wait a
year?
minute, I don't think Daniel was done. There's a story with the one that is not going all so well.
I just didn't structure it enough. I left it wide. I left it too wide open, and then because I wasn't specific enough, it allowed me to rationalize and shift what the original intent of the resolution, right? So that's kind of also I don't get any credit. Like I need a tracking system.
You need to gamify it. Yeah, I get it. I get it. So, Selena, I pick more words of intentions and set intentions as opposed to like truly like yearly goals and resolutions and those kind of things. And so one of my intentions has been to thoughtfully select and make room for things that move me towards experiencing warmth and whimsy. And so far, so good. I will say, however, in a more like daily habit type of thing, I am a work in progress and I continue to try to shift, stretching out the duration of time from the moment that I wake up and the moment that I actually check my cell phone, be it for messages, emails, or whatever. And so the pattern that I'm trying to create, and yes, I know that, we'll be listening to this in the spring, but I'm pretty sure that even then I will still be a work in progress with that. I'm trying to switch and start my mornings with journaling and reflections as opposed to picking up the device in a close proximity to waking up. So far, so good, but definitely have been some setbacks.
Well, I don't always ask her, but I'm going to ask Emily. Did you set a New Year's resolution this year?
Um, I did not formally. I had an idea, and this is probably a spoiler for how this story ends. I wanted to spend more time practicing Spanish, and I didn't really do it. And I think because I didn't put any guardrails in place or kind of plan that out at all, that's probably how that came and went. So how it's going is pretty much how it started. Ready to launch.
Well, you're not alone. So one of the things that I think some of us may know, some of us may not, there is actually a National Quitters Day, which is, I think, the second Friday after the first of the year or sometime in there.
Second Friday in January. Yeah.
Yep, the second Friday of January. And that's about how long most New Year's resolutions last for. Um,
Selena, just going to pause you right there. You
I'm
did not
ready.
talk about yours.
I did not. I don't set resolutions. So what I do instead, and this is very much like professionally based, because I work at a university, my life is very set in semesters. And so I tend to set goals for my semester versus like my New Year's resolution. And my goals often revolve a lot around articles that I'm writing or grants that I'm working on or projects I have going on. Um, which thankfully, for the most part, are all going pretty well. And then in the summertime, I try to set the goal of not working a lot, which I fail at miserably. But that's the goal in the summer is to spend more time like at the pool with the kids, that kind of thing, and then come back in the fall and set my semester goals again. So no, I'm not really good at setting New Year's resolutions. Um, but I do tend to plan out, like I said, my semesters.
Thank you. And so to come back to the Quitters Day, this is actually a database, and I haven't seen, the analysis of the data, but they used fitness apps to look at when like people's activity big scale and when that typically like they saw, I guess, the biggest drop in, I guess, people engaging in activities. So it's pretty like small data set relatively thinking about all the New Year's resolutions that are possible. But it does come from some level of data analysis
Well, and I
on
feel
human
like
behavior.
to your point, it's narrow, but interesting data set for sure because I think exercising, losing weight, eating better, I think those are really popular resolutions that people make. Um, so yeah, interesting that there's actually good data, or well, let me rephrase that, that there are data, not we don't know how good that data are.
There it
Those
is.
data are. I'm struggling with the plural right now. All right. Well, actually, Emily said this, and this kind of brings us to today's episode, which the title of today's episode is How It Started and How It's Going. And so, as we are in spring and reaching kind of the home stretch towards the end of the year, I think it's always a good time to reflect on how things are going. And specifically, I think teachers come into the year with this is kind of my vision for the classroom. This is what I want to happen. We're going to co-construct our rules. This is how I want my classroom to run. Hopefully, there's good instruction around what those classroom procedures and things look like. And I think sometimes as we reach the end of the year, even with really great intentions, we tend to see this little bit of behavioral drift. And so, what I want to talk about today is, why is good behavior management important? And what happens sometimes? Because I hope we all agree that good behavior management is important. And so if that's the case, then why do sometimes we don't maybe practice what we think is the best option sometimes? So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think so many things shift over the course of a year, right? Like you said, we kind of go into the year with these expectations. And for any number of reasons, those expectations could immediately be kind of just blown out. This is not how this is going to go. Whether it's administrative expectations, right? What are your expectations of your job? You get a new administrator and that starts looking different. Whether it's a new literacy initiative that now all of a sudden we've got to change our curriculum and how we're teaching reading, or maybe it's the group of students you get, and not just one student, but how students play off each other, right? So you have sort of this idea, and for any number of reasons, and you can prepare yourself for that. You can prepare the classroom for what you think is going to happen, and then the best laid plans. Here we are, and so there's this constant adjustment and thinking and energy and bandwidth going into up front. What do I need to do to address some of these issues? Whether it's student behavior, or maybe it's providing specially designed instruction during the day, or how you're structuring your classroom and the activities and making sure you're meeting all the requirements placed upon you. But as you go through the year, all kinds of things shift. And part of that might be your tolerance for some of the things that have been happening that may have been a priority early in the school year. Maybe it's calling out, maybe it's kids who are up and out of their seat who are not necessarily disruptive. But you sort of can acclimate to some of those things, even though it's not necessarily sort of your ideal or sort of how you envision the school year going. Um, you may have put in interventions that have been effective, but over time, that takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of thought and planning to continue those things. And so those may fall off. And so, from your environment to sort of your planning, your strategies, your professionalism, your decision making, any one of those things can change. I don't know where I'm going with this, um, other other than it is the best laid plans, and you just don't know. So you might get a new student in, and then you've got to make an adjustment, or the student is now found eligible for special education. You've got to make an adjustment, and so it's all these kinds of adjustments, and really you may lose sight of where you wanted to be at the beginning of the year, and are now dealing sort of in the present. With the hand you've been dealt. That sounds
So,
negative. I don't mean it that way.
Daniel, I gotcha. I think that for me, I think about the typical school year, and I always am amused when folks say how teachers are so lucky they get the whole summer off, right? And the teacher adage is like, yeah, because we put in the work more than a year worth in our 9 months that we were in school. So just shout out to everybody who is still hanging on and doing the best that they can, showing up to schools every single day and still are at it, because as the year progresses, it has been filled with some wins and maybe some less than wins. And I think the energy gets a tendency to kind of wane, right? Like teaching is hard, learning all the time is hard, doing the cognitive lifts that we are asking kids and adults to do in school day in and day out. I mean, it's challenging. And I do think as the year progresses, it's around this time that it's almost like natural for folks to start dreaming about the summer and get really excited. And some of the structures that we have put in place, hopefully, sometimes that implementation drift really, really does happen. I link this to my recent experience when one of my closest friends and I have done a half marathon. And it sounded great, and we were super pumped and super enthused on mile one. And around mile 9 or 10, I think my friend decided to stop being friends with me because I'm the one who talked her into this crazy adventure, right? And I think about it was around that marker that we knew we were getting closer to the end and the celebration at the end, but it also felt like that final push was just really challenging, and our legs were tired, and mine were not even probably functional, and all those other pieces. And I think as we think about the school year, to me it is a little bit, it's probably closer to a marathon than a half marathon, right? And it's around the springtime that we may be not as strategic and consistent with some of our classroom management practices as we were at the beginning. But I do think in that there lies a gift and my invitation for the framing of reflection on, so what is not working well at this point of time, and what are the lessons learned? What can I do differently next year? What are some things that are a teacher error? I thought this was going to be a great routine, and then my kids got into the classroom and they did not think that my clever alliteration, instruction was really helpful or beneficial to them. And then what are some of the things that are still holding strong? So I think in that spring, there lies an opportunity to think about what worked and what didn't and really reflect as to why. And if things worked in the past, but maybe aren't working now, maybe it's a great opportunity to intensify some of that instruction and some of that delivery with some of the classroom management strategies that we have, right? So I think about, and Selena, you mentioned like the co-constructing classroom norms and community agreements. And I think that it is the spring that if you did that well at the beginning, and if you truly had the buy-in into the classroom community, then hopefully by now you're seeing the fruits of your labor. And hopefully by now, kids are able to hold each other accountable, and you don't have to do as much redirection because now it is the way of life, right? Like, no, this is how we interact with one another. This is the way we do school. I have a teacher who shared a story about one of her students saying to the other student, no, don't do that. We are better than this. And it cracked me up because that's something that the teacher was repeatedly saying through the year, right? So I think if you do it well, you can see the fruits of the labor on one hand, but at the same time, as folks are getting excited about the summer and summer plans, and especially if this is about the time that most standardized assessments or those high stakes tests are finished and done, everybody has a tendency to kind of relax. And so maybe it is time to revisit some of those community agreements and remind everyone in our classroom community that we still do have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month of school left to kind of intensify some of those pieces as well.
Yeah, I have a couple points to make off of that. So I agree with you. Hopefully, you have set up really good structures and systems in your classroom through the rules that you've made, through the routines that you've taught, all of those things. But I would also say don't beat yourself up if they're not working as perfectly now as they worked in October when they were fresh and we had practiced them. It's kind of like riding a bike, I feel like in some ways. When you don't ride a bike for a long time and then you get on a bike, you can still ride the bike, but you feel a little rusty, right? It feels a little like you're a little wobbly. You got to get your balance again. You got to figure out how the timing and all that works. And it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you aren't as good at it as maybe you were previously. And so I feel like this is kind of similar. Like we were really good at this in October because we had just practiced all of this and we had had it all reinforced and the instruction had been there. And as time has gone on, it's not that kids don't know what they're supposed to do or can't do it. It's just we need to practice a little bit again. And so sometimes just saying, hey, I feel like maybe we kind of forgot how to turn in our homework, or I feel like maybe we're having some trouble with how we line up at the door. So we're going to just practice that. And it can be a really positive thing, but it does help reinforce those concepts and that this is still the expectation and this is still what's going to happen. Because we all do get a little lax sometimes, and that's okay. But if we're seeing some of those behaviors slip that we don't want to see slip like that, it's an easy way to go back to, hey, we already practiced these. These skills are in our behavioral repertoire. So let's just practice them again and just strengthen them and really solidify them again.
Yes, Lynn, I think it's a great opportunity to intensify some of those reinforcement schedules that we may have had in place, right? Because we recognize that sometimes we all might need a little bit additional reinforcement or a more consistent one or a more frequent one when we are noticing these things happening in the classroom, right? When we are noticing that again, the dreams of summer are intervening, or not intervening, interfering with our instruction, behavioral or academic. So I think I think the other thing, I really appreciate your point about absolutely giving yourself grace, right? Because we all come in with good intentions. We all thought that our plans and our designs were going to work out great. Otherwise, we wouldn't have put them in place. But I do think there is an opportunity to think, while I give myself grace and while I'm looking that this routine did not work at all or did not work out the way I thought it was going to work out, right? It gives you that opportunity to examine what are the pieces? What are the critical features that I can keep within the routine? What is the evidence-based part that needs to stay? But how can I tweak it or how can I adapt it? And I think a lot of times we see this when we put in place um, different reinforcement systems, right? Whether they are classroom tickets, whether they are items in the school store or whatever they might be. And if we don't get the buy-in from students, that I think sometimes as adults, we don't necessarily pick the items that are as alluring to the kids as we think that we do, right? So it might be that the system and the strategy and the intervention is really great, but we just need to make smaller adjustments to make sure that they are working the way we're hoping they are working in the future.
I think, Daria, I think you're right at it, right? Like this, it's just this constant kind of adjustment and readjustment and reflection. And sometimes we get to a point where you almost feel like you have to, right? And so you've focused on so many other things throughout the school year that things shift. I'm moving my hands around a lot. Things shift around, priorities shift, everything shifts. The the thing I kind of, and Selena, you kind of brought this up at the beginning where you're talking about your New Year's resolution, sort of related, is at the beginning of the year when we're setting these things up, and there's a level of excitement and nerves and just this it's like a new year, right? I used to base my New Year's resolutions not on January 1st, but really like this school year, this is what it's going to look like. So that beginning of the year, it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of figuring out what's going to work and tweaking your plans and teaching the routines and the expectations and how we're going to communicate and how all these different little things. And then you build that gets built into the classroom culture. At the end of the year, in thinking about how to sort of revamp or reintroduce, reinvigorate some of those things is really thinking about what is this going to look like next, right? If you're moving from second to third grade, let's start thinking about and getting students to think about when I move to third grade, when I'm a third grader, this is what is important, right? And so it's sort of thinking about we're going to have this gap, we're going to have this, summer is going to be great. But we're doing this because, right? So they're learning the rationale of why we're engaging with each other in certain ways. And I think that applies all the way across. And, especially when we're thinking about moving from elementary to middle and middle to high school, but, and into post-secondary life and thinking about how we're preparing high schoolers and being able to explain why things are the way they are and how we're trying to prepare them for and whatever for life after high school. So just reframing some of those things to think about, like, if you've got a procedure in place and it doesn't make sense for the next setting, then is it important, right? It is just because you can doesn't mean you necessarily should. If it's not making sense, then how can we reframe it in a way that says this is a life skill, right? Like this is going to help you be successful wherever you are.
So, one thing I want to go back to, because you all have hinted at this, but I want to make it really explicit. So, part of the reflection and all of that is, what works, what doesn't, and changing our own practice. Part of it is potentially instruction or re-instruction, or at least greater practice opportunities. But the other part that, like I said, we've hinted at is the reinforcement part, right? And so what do we know about behavior is that what's reinforced is what we will continue to see as far as behavior goes, right? If that behavior is being reinforced, we will see that behavior again in the future. And so if we're not seeing the behaviors we want to see, I think a little bit of reflection about what is being reinforced and what reinforcers are we using. And so maybe at the beginning of the year, the pencils and the stickers and the good jobs and the, whatever the case may be, maybe those were effective and they worked really well. And as time has gone on, maybe they're not as effective as they were previously. And that's not because your system is bad. The reinforcer just doesn't have the reinforcing power that it did previously because kids get tired of things, right? Like I love a good chocolate chip cookie, but if you kept giving me a chocolate chip cookie over and over and over again, eventually I don't want the chocolate chip cookie anymore, and it's not reinforcing. Um, maybe the pencil was really exciting at first, and especially if it's paired with, hey, I'm being recognized for my behavior and the social piece that goes with it. And now maybe that's not as reinforcing as it used to be. And so, what can we use? One, what can we use that might be more reinforcing? But two, how often are we continuing to provide those reinforcers? Because at first we probably had a relatively high schedule of reinforcement. We were getting reinforced a lot. And as time goes on and kids do better and we see the behavior we want to see, we all have this tendency, whether we're teachers, parents, doesn't matter, we tend to like pull off the reinforcement. Like, oh, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing now. So I don't have to pay attention to that like I used to. And we may just need to go back to paying attention and reinforcing that.
So, Selena, I am gonna say this in jest, but in every joke, there's a little bit of truth, right? So essentially, your question is, what do you do when your tickets or tokens have bought all the things in the school store, right? Now that you have access to all the things that were available, how do you continue to engage in classroom management? So, I'm being a little cheeky here, but I do think that this is a good idea to talk about because you're right. A lot of those reinforcement, a lot of the novelty has worn off, right? And I think that this is where the things that we have talked about in previous episodes are really, really important. Having those relationships with the students are really, really important because their preference for some reinforcers at the beginning of the year may be vastly different than at the end of the year. For example, at the beginning of the year, having lunch with a teacher might have been a great thing. But now that you know that you're getting ready to move to a different school and you may not see some of your friends, you're going to be much more interested in hanging out with them as opposed to having lunch with a teacher, particularly if you have had lunch with a said teacher over, several times throughout the year. On the
Well, and Daria, just to add
but
in there too, maturity comes into place too, right? Like a beginning of the year second grader, using Daniel's example, and an end of the year second grader don't always have the same interests, right? Because they're just getting older and getting bigger.
Sure. And a big part of that is, yes to maturity and yes to like some things just, again, the novelty just wears off. Do we all remember like certain things that every year is the hot trend and kids like love it, will do anything for them? Like I'm really dating myself, but there used to be, when I taught fifth grade, there were this stretchy bracelets that were in a shape of a fruit when you took them off. Does anybody else remember that?
I
No?
do.
Okay. If you remember that, please validate me in the comments for this episode. But they were like these stretchy little bracelets that looked like rubber bands, and you wore them around your wrist, right? But when you took it off, instead of being like a typical rubber band, it went into a original shape, and they all seemed to be like pineapples or, strawberries or whatever. Anyway, the point is that was like the hot item in elementary schools, and that was something that the kids would really work for. But guess what? Now nobody even knows what it is that I'm talking about. And if I try to offer that to students in the same elementary at the same age group, this is not the new thing, right? The same thing as we had like what were those they just called
The
like poppets
poppets. Yep. I
or
was
the
just thinking about
spinners,
that.
right? Like, and again, and some of them, and some kids still find them useful, and some of them are great as fidgets, but it doesn't have that same excitement about it. It's just not as reinforcing to most students as before, right? And if we're taking it like to a high school example, there are also some things that it's not even a maturity level, but it just you had a full year to have a very different history of all of your experiences, right? And relationship change and all of those things change. And so I think we need to really leverage kind of bringing this full circle. We need to leverage those relationships with the students and really utilize the things that they find meaningful, that they find reinforcing. And I loved what Daniel said to this point about what will you need at the next place, right? Whether you're going on to the next grade or whether you're transitioning out like to the real world, quote unquote, what are some of the whys that I can help you see why this is important, why this is the behavior that we're going to continue to engage in, and how do you help reinforce it? So I think that there is a lot of pieces of having authentic conversations and helping people see the rationale behind why we still do school the way that we do, while also finding ways to increase additional, potentially different types of reinforcers.
Daria, I'm glad you said that. Well, I'm sort of glad you said it because I was going to say it, but I think you said it better. But my perspective was in thinking about the relationships is, you were talking about the beginning of the year and maybe it's motivating. I was thinking that as the year goes on, if we've kind of done this in the way that I would want to do it, the kids will be more motivated to spend time doing things with me by the end of the year, right? That we've really got a rapport, we've got this relationship that allows us to joke and to be creative and to, just really kind of meet kids where they are and it not be an academic demand or a procedural demand or a demand. It really is this relationship that is friendly and fun. And you said it, kind of leveraging that to say, there are opportunities beyond spending your bucks for a bracelet or a blow pop or the most recent school I was in, like they had these sunglasses in the school store, and I don't even know if they had lenses. They did, but like the kids who were wearing the sunglasses that day were it. Like it was so funny because they'd have the school store and there'd be a handful of kids with sunglasses on. They'd let them wear them all day, and like that was the thing. But we also worked really hard to help facilitate, like, okay, you can also bring a friend to play a game with, the PE teacher, or, really tying in and building these relationships, because that's durable, right? Like that changes the whole climate.
Yeah, and I think there's also an opportunity, Daniel, to that point is if you did your job right, then yes, hopefully you're having these really strong and positive and supportive relationships. And if some mistakes were made along the way, right, then you have this gift of time to engage in some of the restorative practices and restore some relationships and make sure that we are ending the year strong as well, learning skills as to how to navigate some potentially challenging situations as well. I think there's a very wise piano teacher in Williamsburg, Virginia. Her name is Miss Natalia. And she talks about how it's really important to start the piece strong and well and to finish it really strong and well because the audience doesn't remember what happens in the middle, right? And I sometimes think about our school year that when we come to the end of it, sometimes we are tired, right? We are, quite frankly, sometimes really exhausted. But I think it's really, really important to find the ways to make that finish strong because at the end of the day, we want kids to come back the next year, right? To the next grade level, but we do want them to come back. So I think that it's important to be strategic and to take the behavior principles that we know about leveraging the reinforcement, about setting up those system for the kids to make sure that whatever they find meaningful, whatever they find enjoyable within reason and that are, situationally appropriate, that we are able to make sure that that is happening at the end of the year. And I would also say, just looking back and reflecting on all of those universal practices, right? Are we still doing what it is that we think we're doing? Are we still reinforcing appropriate behavior that we want to see, or have we just kind of gotten a little tired and forgot all about that? Are we still providing lots of opportunities to respond and that engaging instruction, or are we now just kind of like, okay, we're almost there, here's some independent work? Are we still really responding to some of that interfering behavior as opposed to no longer responding because we're just trying to make it to the end? So is there also an opportunity to kind of fine tune the systems that we had? Or if we realize that the year has gone by and we haven't done some of those pieces, I really don't think it's ever too late to start, right? Do we need to develop a different procedure or routine for the last month of school? Do we need to shift our instruction a little bit differently? And I think that the sky really is the limit, but I do think it's important to kind of look at the pieces that we know that is the science of behavior and figuring out how do you apply it in this novel context of springtime, particularly after standardized assessments, when everybody is getting really excited about the summer.
So I think that brings us to a good place. One thing I would say, not only do we want the kids to come back, we want the kids to want to come back because hopefully, at least in the fall, we all reach that point in the spring, the home stretch where it's like, oh, can this just be over? But in the fall, we want kids to be excited to be back in the school. So I think that brings us to a really good ending point of this conversation. I think the summation here is it's a really good time to just take a second and reflect on what's going on, and is it going as well as you want it to go? And if not, why might that be? And we've talked through some considerations of what could be influencing some of those things, which actually brings us to our unpaid ad for the episode. As always, we don't we don't get payment for this. This isn't anything that, we've been sponsored to do. These are just things that we think are helpful that we want to share with our listeners. And so, Daria, I think you have the unpaid ad today.
I
Wasn't Miss Natalia the paid ad? Didn't she pay for
She is
Daria's
not
shout
paid by
out?
she's not paid. She's just paid with lots of love and respect from me. All right. Um, So the actual one that Selena was referring to is the resource that I'm really excited to share. It comes to us from the Center on PBIS, so the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. And it is, and I know we mentioned the center itself before, that comes with plethora of resources, but today I wanted to draw the listeners' attention to their specific one, which is their self-assessments tool, the revised version. So this is a tool that was authored and created by Brandy Simonson, Sarah Fairbanks, Amy Breach, and George Sagai. And it is a really short and sweet tool where you first reflect on what is the current level of your universal classroom practices. Are they in place, or maybe is there room for improvement? And then the next piece that comes with that is an opportunity to reflect and figure out what are some of those tier one support, some of those classroom practices that you can target and kind of come up with a plan. So I appreciate a good tool that not only gives me an opportunity to see, okay, what's my present level of performance with classroom management, but also offers an opportunity to do a little bit deeper reflection and analysis and come up with some action steps. So if you're not familiar with that, it's an oldie but a goodie. Check it out, and we will make sure that you have the link to that in the show's notes.
Great. Thank you, Daria. Again, I think it's always prudent to have some time for reflection. And one of the things that I would encourage our listeners to do is figure out when you can make time to do that. And so I'll be honest, I used to have a pretty lengthy commute from when I worked in the schools to my house. And so that drive time was when I would kind of reflect on my day and think about how things went and what I wanted to change and what I wanted to keep. But whatever works for you, just find time to do it. And if tools like what Daria was talking about are helpful, I definitely say take advantage of them because they can kind of guide some of your thinking if you're not sure where to start. So with that, I want to thank my co-host, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daria, thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And Emily, thank you as always for keeping us in line.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, we really appreciate you, and we hope that you will see us on our next episode, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.